So, hi everyone, welcome to this webinar that's kindly hosted by Ikigai, who are sponsoring the Best Transformation Team Award category in the iESE Awards 2026. We're deeply grateful for our award sponsors because it means that no public money is spent on our events. So without you guys, we wouldn't be able to deliver such an important event in the public sector calendar. So thank you once again, Nick, for joining us.
Most welcome. Most welcome, Annabelle.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say thanks very much for the opportunity to do so. It's really important for us to be involved in this, and you know, we're kind of super pleased to invest our money directly back into public services.
Wonderful. So in terms of our session for today, we're going to give you a sort of an overview of what the iESE Awards, a little bit of a background around the process from sending in your submissions to identifying our award winners. We're going to give a little bit of insight around how we judge the nominations, some practical information about this upcoming awards event, and then I'm going to be handing over to some of our judging panel members who are going to be sharing from their perspectives, you know, what makes a submission stand out, how to really capture transformation that's delivered impact. Impact is a word that we're going to be using a lot today. How we determine who becomes our sort of Council of the Year winner, International Public Body of the Year winners, and we're going to sort of wrap things up from there. So in terms of who we've got in the session, I'll leave you all to give a little bit of an intro when it comes to your session, but we've essentially got, we've got Councillor David Tutt, who's the chairman of iESE, we've got Susan Attard, who's the head of productivity at the LGA, and we've also got Simon Parker, who's the executive director of resources at Bath and North East Somerset Council. So these will be our sort of judges that we're going to be speaking to today for the Q&A. We're going to run through all of this presentation and then we're going to do questions at the end. So the iESE Awards then. So essentially the iESE Awards form part of iESE's best practice programme, where we aim to put a spotlight on the most innovative, impactful and inspiring projects that are going on in the sector. So whether this be, you know, pioneering digital solutions to groundbreaking community initiatives, the awards are essentially a platform to showcase, you know, creativity and determination that drives that positive change, the stuff that really makes the meaningful difference to the residents and to the communities that we serve. So we are now in the 17th year of our awards programme, and we've just got a little bit of a map here to show you sort of the breadth of where our nominations have come from. So using the information that we've captured, certainly from when I joined iESE sort of 8 years ago, we've had around 40% of UK councils submit nominations. We've also got our fire authorities and our police authorities and some of our total figures here. So we've got about a third of police forces and constabularies, and we've got 30% as well of our fire and rescue services. 3 years ago, we expanded our horizons even further and introduced the International Public Body of the Year, where we've seen submissions come in through the likes of Azerbaijan, from the United Arab Emirates, Bangladesh, Ukraine, Lithuania, Lebanon and Salvador, and we're looking to hopefully see more interest grow in this current year for our awards event. So just a little bit of an update around sort of the performance that we did last year. So last year we received 193 award submissions from 63 organisations. We're hoping to expect similar numbers for 2026, but this sort of gives a little bit of a breakdown in terms of the types of organisations that submit for our iESE Awards. From a more practical point of view then, so a couple of dates to sort of give you an overview of the timeline when it comes to the iESE Awards then. So we opened our nominations on the 8th of September this year, which gave sort of 20 weeks for people to be able to download the form, go away and produce nominations. The deadline to submit is Friday the 9th of January, so if you haven't already got that date marked in your diary, make sure you do so. We then kind of have a week of kind of processing the nominations that come into us, putting them in the right places and getting them all lined up ready for judging. We then spend 2 weeks judging. So we have a wonderful panel that essentially judge each category. They go away and judge the nominations within their category. And then we finally announce the for the finalists in the week of the 2nd of February. So you'll be expecting to hear from us within that week. We then spend a couple of weeks gathering information, doing final tweaks to our award ceremony. We have deadlines for requesting the sort of finalist representatives from each of the finalist nominees, which will be Friday the 13th of February. So we essentially invite 2 representatives from each finalist to attend the award ceremony, which is going to be on Wednesday the 4th of March at Church House. Extra tickets are available to be purchased should you wish more than 2 people to attend. So again, we'll be gathering that information, and that's kind of how it all works from a practical point of view. In terms of the categories that we've got for 2026, we typically have the same sort of categories, but we've got some new ones for 2026. So we've got the use of AI in public services, very much a buzzword of the now. So we've introduced that as a category for 2026. Following a few years of requests as well, we've got a Care Cubed category, which looks at organisations that have essentially really embedded the use of that national care costing tool into their organisation. And then finally, our cyber risk and resilience category, to essentially identify those organisations who are brave enough to sort of highlight, how have they been strengthening their internal resilience against the current threat landscape. Just wanted to say a note on the categories. They're very much guidelines. If we don't get sufficient submissions, we don't have enough submissions, or the quality of them is not essentially hitting the mark, we do close categories. And likewise, if we do see kind of emerging themes or trends from the nominations that we do receive, we then open new categories as well. For example, we opened a new category in 2023, which was the people, value and culture category. And we've also closed categories, like we did a procurement category in 2021, we closed that. So we're very flexible on what we receive. We also think that as well, that when you submit your nominations, and if you haven't necessarily ticked the box on when we're reading through it and we think it could actually be better suited for another category, we'll lift and shift as well. So ultimately, we're kind of here to help share your best story. These categories shouldn't really be seen as like a hurdle or a barrier or a limitation of what you've described within your nomination, just sort of initial guidance. So just something to flag there. Don't be totally dependent upon a category, because we might actually end up moving it to somewhere else that we think is best place. With regards then to the judging itself, we've got the sort of following process that we adhere to. So during the process, essentially each nomination is given a score out of 10, marked against 2 different criteria that I will talk about in the next slide. Each award category has essentially a judge who delivers that first objective score for each nomination within their category. These scores are then moderated against the rest of the nominations within that category, almost in like a ranking sort of situation. And then finally, iESE then conducts a second round of moderation with all of the nominations as whole, to sort of just as a second level of moderation in there. Essentially, the nominations with the top 3 marks, or the top 3 scores for every category, are listed as our finalists, and those will be the ones that are awarded the bronze, silver and gold within their category. And again, similar to what we said about the categories, we have had it before where we've only had like one gold winner for the category, and we have as well had bronze, silver and gold for the Council of the Year and of the Year categories as well. So it's very much what we receive depending on what we're able to then award. So in terms of that evaluation criteria that I mentioned then, it's that's related to the scoring. We kind of assess each nomination against 2 main criteria points. So innovation and impact. So we're consistently looking for new things, new ways of improving the way that we work and deliver our services. Our award scoring is pretty much connected to the iESE transformation framework, which was created in collaboration with other public sector bodies and partners modelling the stages of transformation. So it's all about sort of the process of making our services as efficient and effective as possible as a starting point, moving into more of a customer centric, where you start to remove concepts of individual professions and you start managing things solely around the customer, and then to this sort of community level where you're effectively starting to move upstream, to the real root and cause and trying to divert demand, essentially where the ultimate goal is that you're really empowering resilient, self-sufficient communities with public services acting as essentially facilitators rather than sole providers. So innovation can happen at all three of those sort of levels, and we're looking to really identify things that are, absolutely bleeding edge, things that may have not even been tried and tested yet. Judges will be asking the questions, has this approach been taken to delivering the project been really original? Has the initiative set almost like a new set of standards for local public service delivery? If so, how? Are there best practice lessons learnt from the initiative, and if so, what are they, and how can they also be shared across the sector? So those are the sort of questions they're going to be asking in the innovation part of scoring. And then impact is where it really gets down to how has this truly made a difference to the end user, and this can be expressed in customer terms, or like for the resident, you can express impact in terms of the staff involved in the project, impact to elected members, or a combination of everything above. There's lots of ways for you to demonstrate how you've delivered that meaningful impact, but it's essentially where judges are able to assess how far down this journey of transformation or service improvement has the project got to, because there will be some cases where the innovation part of things is really up there, really highly scored because it's pioneering, it's exciting, fresh, new stuff. But you can kind of tell that the project is essentially in its infancy in terms of where it is in its life cycle. So we do absolutely encourage you to submit nominations for things that are early on. However, it might be the case that we ask you to then resubmit in a year's time, for example, where you've had the time to see how it's progressed even further. You've been gathering that evidence to demonstrate the level of impact captured. So yes, within impact, judges are looking for those proven results, qualitative as well as quantitative data as well. How far along is the project? How have the results exceeded targets, the sort of forecasted stuff at the beginning? And lastly, we also encourage you to submit supporting evidence with your submission. So this could be quotes, it could be testimonials, interviews. It doesn't have to be something that's actually written within your nomination itself. It could be like an additional separate video file or a supporting PDF document or something that outlines a particular part of the project. The more evidence and the more reference to impact that you include, the more likely you will receive a higher score. And also, I think one of the hardest part of judges and what we've kind of typically seen over the years is the increase in the sort of average scores that we're seeing in the categories. So back in 2023, we did a very similar webinar to do like a Q&A, how can people pull the best out of their nominations. The average score back in 2023 was 6.8 out of 10, and last year the average was 7.9 out of 10. So we are seeing this progression of submissions becoming better and better, and it's something for us at iESE where we'll sort of look to be continually monitoring and adjusting our scoring for future awards events. So I'm hoping that that's laid a bit of a good foundation to bring it to sort of outline what our awards event and the judging entails. I'm now going to hand it over to some of our judges who are going to talk a little bit about what they look for when it comes to award nominations. And we're going to start off with Susan, who's going to talk a little bit about what makes a submission stand out for her. So Susan, over to you. Feel free to as well give a little bit of an introduction and how you've interacted with iESE and our awards event over the last few years.
Thank you very much indeed, Annabelle, and it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon and talking to colleagues who are thinking about putting submissions in. I really hope you do. First of all, I'd like to say that it's an absolute privilege to be invited to be a judge as for the annual Public Sector Transformation Awards. And it's just inspiring reading and hearing the stories that the submissions and that the public sector bodies have put forward. And the thing I love to see, or the thing I love about being a judge, is that I get to see firsthand the breadth of forward-thinking and innovative projects that are currently being rolled out across the sector. And I find that particularly useful in my role as Head of Productivity at the LGA, the Local Government Association. So I work in the part that works with councils to help them improve and to continuously improve. And a lot of this is about sharing best practice. So my team are always really keen to see who's been nominated and who's been at the awards, and to then see if these are councils that we're working with, and to learn the lessons from what's happening in other parts of the public sector as well. And I've just been blown away really by the innovation, particularly when you think how much councils and public sector have had to do more and more, either with less or with the same. So really is very inspiring. So for me, what makes the submissions stand out? There are three key elements. First of all, a clear story setting out what has been achieved with clear outcomes and the impact for the communities or the residents, demonstrating how that project was delivered. So clear story, clear outcomes, impact, and what that means for the end users at the end of the day, the difference it's made. The second thing that for me is important is about demonstrating how the project was delivered, including the practical steps taken and feedback from either people involved or the recipients. And so often when we're sharing stories and looking at case studies and working with local councils, it's the how bit that people really want to get under the skin. The what is great, but how did you go about it? What were the things that you have done that you might do differently as a result? And what are the things that actually you've learned you definitely would do again that are shareable and scalable? And then that takes me on to my third key element, which is the project or the that's being proposed, the submission, innovative? And are there lessons that translate across other parts of the public sector? So is this something that could actually other people seeing could actually contact and then make for themselves, actually take on board what's proposed? So that's my three key elements. And I thought I'd just sort of highlight a couple of examples of applications that have stood out for me. The first one was Cornwall Councils, their business regulatory support team. So people who would work in environmental health and go out and do the food inspections. But they did something very innovative in terms of moving from paper to digital, and they were the first council at the time that had actually moved to doing their forms their inspections and things all online. And they completely transformed the way in which they delivered food safety inspections and business advice. And in the 12 months following their move to digitally assisted inspections, the team were able to increase the number that were delivered by 64%. So that's a huge productivity gain. And there was also a tangible contribution for the wider reputation of the local food business sector, with the data at the time from the Food Standards Agency showing an astonishing 98% of Cornish food businesses having achieved broad compliance with food hygiene legislation. And that's no mean feat, given that Cornwall have the second highest number of food businesses to support in England. So some really impactful data and information. But they had set what they wanted to do, not only for themselves as a business, what they wanted to do for businesses, and what they wanted to do for residents who obviously want to have assurance when they're going to eat out in restaurants. And the great thing about this was that it was scalable to other councils in England, and for them to share what they had done, a simple piece of technology, but developing in-house themselves, that others could take and use to help improve their services. And then the second one I wanted to highlight was the Humberside Police Force Control Room. And Humberside Police Force Control Room have had a remarkable transformation journey. And they had two clear objectives. They wanted to be, first of all, to be the to deliver a best-in-class service for their community, and secondly, to be become the employer of choice. And they had come from a sort of lower base in terms of customer experience and also staff being employed in the control room. And as a result, they have concentrated on sort of building the skills and capabilities of staff and have a continuous improvement programme, and again have used some groundbreaking technology which again was shareable and able to be utilised, and lessons learnt from other force control rooms. And they were very clear about the use of data and evidence to inform the change. And in terms of their impact, if you were unfortunate enough to dial 999 within the Humberside area, your call will be answered within 2 seconds. And if you ring for a 101 call, that will be answered within 5 seconds, which is the industry's leading timescales. And that also, when they were inspected by the police inspectors, they commented that at the time that the Humberside Police Force had one of the best control rooms in the country, and their performance continues to go from strength to strength. And what I liked about both of these examples was not only was there a clear story and a narrative that could be followed, but the fact you could really see the difference, and there was evidence of the difference that was made, and that for me was really important. And also, they weren't just going to be standing still. They wanted to continue on that journey of improvement and innovation and to share the learning. So I'll pause there. Thank you very much. And I believe I'm now handing over or back to Annabelle, I believe. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. No, thank you, Susan, and completely agree. Being able to show like where they started from and like where they are now and the results and the evidence from that, absolutely. And also being able to, right at the very start, address the problem. What was the challenge they were trying to overcome? Really setting the scene at the start, so that when we're reading through these nominations, it's really clear and crystal cut of what you're trying to achieve. Absolutely. So I'm now going to hand over to Simon. Simon is the Executive Director of Resources at Bath and North East Somerset Council, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what he's going to be looking out for when he's going to be judging his category. So Simon.
Thank you very much. And I'm in a coffee shop. Apologies if there's some background noise. I'm really thrilled to be judging the award. I sort of feel like you're a proper grown-up when you get asked to judge awards. So thank you, Annabelle and Nick, for putting me in the frame. I feel like I finally made it. In terms of transformation, I think I'm going to pick up on many of the themes you've heard already, but let me do that in my own way. I think my starting point for these awards, we're all facing a really challenging outlook, aren't we? I mean, maybe there are some people on the call whose governments are lavishing money upon their public sector at the moment. And if you are, that's great. But if you're in the sort of situation that my council's in, we face a very challenging 3-year outlook. We have a largely sort of a good but a modernised organisation. We can see loads of opportunities around technology, around AI, around working differently with communities. But grasping that's a real challenge, and moving from where we are to where we want to be is going to be, it's doable, but it will take a lot of effort. And I'm looking for, I suppose, ideas, inspiration that in these awards going to help me tackle my challenge, so I can learn from what you're doing elsewhere. I think my starting point for this category is, firstly, I know it sounds like a really simple question, but is the thing you're putting forward actually transformation? Because quite a lot of stuff we call transformation isn't really. It's continuous improvement, it's BAU, it's tweaking a process, it's making things a bit better or a bit cheaper. For me, if it's transformation, it means you're making a substantial shift in the way that the thing is done, and that you're doing that in a permanent way that's adding real value. So what I want to see, firstly, is your thing genuinely transformation, or is it just the same old service with a few bells and whistles? I think it's really important to emphasise that transformation, it is about efficiency, isn't it? Because we all face budget problems, but it's not just about efficiency. And if you give me a really good submission that doesn't save any money whatsoever, that's fine. So, I'm not saying that transformation for me has to be about saving money. It could be about improved user experience. It could be about engaging people differently in decision making. It could be about productivity. community empowerment. It could even be something about the way that you've set up a program that's really innovative within the organisation. But I'd encourage you on the call to think about this in a broad sense. You know, efficiency is brilliant, and of course we all need to save money, but it's much more than that. It's really about how we're adding value to the work that we do. I think one of the key things I'll be looking for in all of that, regardless of how you framed your translation, is about user focus. So for me, good transformation is about how we've really understood what the need is, how we've understood the people that we're trying to serve. Often, I think if you do that well, you'll reframe the problem, you'll come up with a different solution, because you'll be trying to meet people's real needs, not just guessing from where you're sitting. So I'm looking for evidence and examples of how you brought the user of your service into the process of redesigning it. Now, yeah, obviously, when we say user focus, we often think about communities, about citizens, and that's really important. And I'm really excited about those projects. Those will definitely stand a good chance. But it could be someone internal. You know, it could be that you're delivering a better skills offer, or you're making your HR system better. And if that's then driving better productivity, making life easier for your colleagues, which means they can go on and add more value, that's user focus too. So again, I really want to see that evidence that you've thought about who you're serving, understood what they need, and redesigned the service around that. But I'm not fussy about who the user is. I just want to know that you've understood who it is and you've engaged with them properly. I'm really keen in doing this, that a good transformation can often be quite a small thing. It can often be reshaping a complaints process or a job application process or whatever, and that's really valid. If your project's quite small, as long as it's really transformational and interesting, I want to see it. But I'd love to see stuff that has wider applicability. So, you know, you've changed a process in one small part of your business. How would you scale that up? What could that mean if you broadened it out? How are you seeing that in the context of the whole system around you? So what potential does this idea have to go further? And I think linked to that, what learning have you taken from doing the transformation? I think it's really important that we do the sort of double loop learning piece here. So I'm really interested in seeing not just kind of what you've learned implementing the thing, but what that means you'll do differently for the future, what that means you'll do differently in your system, and how you're using that to drive improvement in your wider transformation. So I think it's about seeing that kind of that change, that transformational change, plus the wider context you're building around it. I think that's really, really valuable for me in assessing the goal. What happens next as a result of this? Or is it just a cool one-off? And then I guess the final point for me, and lots of people have touched on it already, but I think there's something around what good evidence is. So I do want to know it's made an impact, but I'm really aware that particularly with new practice, with stuff that's preventative, that's taking a long-term view, putting a number on that can be quite hard. So if you've got data, if you've got customer satisfaction, if you've got savings, if you've got productivity figures, that's brilliant. And numbers are great and they build productivity, but it's not the only form of evidence that I think we'll want to take seriously for this. I think really what I'm trying to get at is you need to show me what it is that's convincing you this thing is working and delivering a transformational outcome. So that could be numbers, it could be stories, it could be user feedback, it could be video, it could be a whole range of different things. So I wouldn't want to limit yourself, you know, you think if I can't show you, you know, I've saved 10%, then it's not a good entry. That's not true. I think a good entry will show us what is telling you this works. Why do you think it's working, and what can you use to show me that and explain it to me? And I think entries that can do that will stand a very, very good chance. Back to you, Annabelle.
That's great. Thank you, Simon, and completely resonate with what you're saying there about even though the piece of work that they might be submitting a nomination for might be that moment in time, that one piece of work that they've delivered, but almost looking into the future and being able to take the lessons learned from that project and how is that going to then impact the rest of the stuff that's being delivered. Super important, and yeah, really lovely to be able to see in submission. So thank you so much, Simon. Now we're going to move on to Councillor David Tutt, who's going to talk to us a little bit about some of the Public Body of the Year categories. So Councillor of the Year, an example. What are we looking for with regards to these sort of larger categories? So David, if you're with us.
It's better. Thank you, Annabelle.
Wonderful.
I have the privilege of chairing iESE, but before I took on that role, I was fortunate enough to, on 2 occasions, be leading a council that won the Council of the Year award. Once for a large transformational project within Eastbourne Borough Council, and the second time jointly with Lewis when we brought those two council staff and services together. So I've a bit of knowledge about what it takes to win, and more recently, since becoming chair of iESE, I've twice been on the judging panel for the Council of the Year. So what's it all about? Does it mean that you're the best council in the country? Maybe. But then again, it may be that you can demonstrate major improvement over a limited period of time and be probably the most improved, or one of the most improved councils in the UK. It should demonstrate clear innovation, and it should be transformational. So it really should be able to demonstrate the changes that have taken place within that council and within the community. It's important that it's planned, it's structured, and that can be demonstrated in the submission, and that it's inclusive. So it's likely to involve a number of different areas, not focused simply on one project. And what I would want to see out of any of this is a very clear community benefit, not something that's just purely internally focused. It's got to be something that the community recognise the difference that's taken place within the location. So to give you an example of this, I'd like to refer to last year's winner, which was Watford. Watford have a relatively small number of staff. They had a very clear corporate plan. It had so many elements to it, you thought this couldn't possibly be deliverable within the team that they have. But they worked with their community, they worked with their businesses, they worked with their voluntary sector partners, and with ordinary residents, day-to-day residents who had no involvement with the council at all, in bringing about major change in the delivery of services, in the delivery of capital projects, housing projects, and also, and for me, one of the key changes that was very, very easy to identify and to see was the way that the Watford community have a pride of place. The message, we are Watford, and really want to stand up for the area, but also people who have no involvement in the council are supportive of the council and the way that it's run. That for me made it a Council of the Year.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, David. Yep, Council of the Year, it could be you. We typically do see as well some organisations put in a whole host of different nominations, and they don't tick the box for Council of the Year, and we sometimes go away and we pull out, oh my gosh, goodness, there's sort of 8 submissions here across a whole breadth of things, and for that reason we then say, well, this could very well be Council of the Year because they're showing all the great stuff and transformative work that they're doing across a whole as well. So we do that as well. If you haven't ticked that Council of the Year box, and you might actually be Council of the Year if you're showing really great stuff across a whole host of different categories. So yes, it could be you guys. It'd be great to see who's going to be Council of the Year for 2026. So I think that's everything that we're going to cover. I think we're going to just close with just a very quick summary. We're going to ask every one of our speakers today just a very quick piece of around what one piece of advice would you give to someone that's considering applying for the awards to essentially maximize the impact of their application? Just that one sort of tip to take away for our attendees from this webinar today, and then we'll open the floor up for questions. I know there's a couple of bits and pieces that have been put into the chat, so we'll address those, and we'll get people to raise their hands and ask direct questions. So yes, if we go round and sort of say as a whole, one piece of advice, what would you give? I'll start. From my perspective, I would say my advice would be, even though we do talk a lot about the impact and the fact that we're looking for those nominations that are very well into their life cycle, I would still encourage people to submit early on. We keep tabs on on submissions that are coming in. So if we see something that is looking like it's going to be really interesting, we do award Certificate of Excellences. We do then reflect back on previous year's submissions. So it's almost an opportunity for you to sort of just put yourselves on our radar, to know that something big is coming. So please do continue to submit, even if it is something in the early stage, because we will make note and we will remember. So that would be my piece of advice. Susan, what would you say for yourself?
Thank you. I would say telling a clear story. So storytelling is really important. And I think what might be helpful is to get somebody to read your submission who knows nothing about what you have done. And that might then put the application as a judge would be reading it. So that's my perhaps one bit of advice. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, Simon, what would you give? What's your one sort of top tip for maximising the impact of their applications? Oh, I believe Simon might have frozen, so I'll just quickly hand over to David if there's a little bit of connectivity problems. David, what would you say?
Thank you, Annabelle. I would say demonstrate the journey that you've been on, explain the starting point and the change that's taken place and where you are today, so you can demonstrate that it really has been transformational change.